Hello, welcome in right now here to Caden's Weather Center. Today is August 1st. We have a lot to talk about, so we're just going to jump right into it. The tropics right now are our main focus. Invest 97L. We have that brand new Invest right here in the Atlantic. We're taking a look at it kind of over the Dominican Republic here. Very, very interesting storm that we could be anticipating here. Completely different update really than the last time. This is we've had some big changes over the past couple of, over 24 hours of the models and all of that. So we're definitely going to go over that because we've seen a lot of big change here. So taking a look here at the satellite though, kind of what we're looking at, this is Invest 97L is going to head into this big orange area right here. As it heads into this orange area, this is the best possibility for formation here in the next 7 days. Really by this weekend, we're going to see probably a tropical system here. But look at this, 60% chance already by the National Hurricane Center, but now starting to get into that 2-day chance here of 20% chance here for the National Hurricane Center, putting it for the next 48 hours. And we'll see that continue to jump. The question is, though, does this go any more of the northern part of Cuba or the southern part, or does it just go right directly over Cuba? If it goes directly over Cuba, it's going to take a little bit more time for it to develop. And if it goes under or more to the north of Cuba, it's going to develop a lot quicker. The worries that we have here is really in this area right here, because we obviously know how the Gulf of Mexico is. The Gulf of Mexico is very hot. It's very, very favorable for when tropical systems go in there. The big question is what does the dry air look like when we're in there as well? So a lot to be paying attention to, but as you can see, we're seeing a lot of deep convection starting to blow up over here, just north of the Dominican Republic. Deep convection still blowing up, and could we see that throughout the rest of the day? We're going to have to keep an eye out on this, especially when the spaghetti models do come out a little bit later today. So taking a look here at the National Hurricane Center, we obviously see we have this 7-day development chance. Yesterday, it was a lot more different in the video update on what we could see. We had a little bit more, a little bit still off to the west, but majority still off to the east. So really a big opportunity here, to realize. It's a big opportunity to realize that the models are now starting to agree, so I should start preparing here if I'm in Western Florida and all that. So you need to take this opportunity to get prepared, because the models are starting to agree and really actually are starting to get a little bit scary for Florida here. So a little bit to be paying attention to as we go on, obviously, throughout the next couple of hours and the next couple of days, because we're going to keep a look at these models. But there you go. Big change over here, push to the west. Taking a look at the 2-day outlook here, starting to, get that look on the satellite picture there, but now has that 20% chance here as it's going to continue to push over here and get into a little bit more favorable environment. Right now, it's not in the favorable environment at all for it to start forming. Taking a look here at the Euro model, though, over here in the next 24 to 72 hours, what could we expect over here? Pretty good odds over here, down kind of just south of Cuba, just a little bit south of Cuba, for the best possibilities for a tropical depression to form in the next 3 days here. Then we head into 48 to 96 hours. We see that Euro model start to pull up here. And yesterday in that video that I brought out, we were over here on the complete opposite coast. So now when we're seeing it just go over here, the question is, where does it go after that? So the European model is saying a little bit more of a farther westward push. We're going to have to keep an eye out on that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit here with the models. But a little bit more of a westward push than the GFS is saying. The GFS is bringing it a little bit more to the east here, closer to the west coast of Florida. So a lot to be paying attention to, really, as we go on throughout the next couple of hours today and throughout the tomorrow, because that is when we're going to see the spaghetti models really start to pick up, and we have to see a little bit maybe more of a, center point of where we're going to exactly watch where it could be making landfall. But no matter what, the storm can stretch farther out than the center. So I do want to take a look here at this, because this is, I think, is going to be our biggest threat, is that rainfall. Taking a look here at the European model, we head into the next 24 hours. Obviously, we have these sea breeze thunderstorms go on right here in Florida. That is making it a little bit more difficult for any big rain systems to come by, because the ground will be already saturated, which will make the flooding easier to happen here in central Florida here. Then we head into 36 hours. We're starting to see some of that blue. That's that tropical system down here. That will continue to push up, but still those sea breeze thunderstorms happen every pretty much day here in Florida. So we keep an eye out on that every day on the radar. Then we head in over here 72 hours. We're already starting to see 1.5 inches and 1 inch over here. We're already starting to see 1.5 inches of rain down here in South Florida, the Keys, and Miami. So a little bit to be paying attention to. Then we head into 90, 96 hours. This is where we see a little bit of a difference. The Euro model is bringing it more obviously to the west here. If we just go in 144 hours here, 3 inches for the Tampa Bay area. Then we have a little bit more for 3.1 for the Big Bend area. So a little bit more to be paying attention to as the storm, possibly could bring itself into the northeast. The question is, what happens? Does it race off to the northeast? That's a lot of people might be thinking, the storm races off to the northeast. It usually happens. No. We're seeing a little bit maybe of an issue where it stalls out and kind of just stays there. And, the GFS model is kind of saying it goes up, it makes a loop, and then kind of goes back. So it's a little bit more of a harder, situation. And we all know when the storm is trying to, let's say, make a loop or anything, it slows down. It's going to slow down. It's going to really ramp up the rainfall threat here. So something to pay attention to if you live on the west coast of Florida here. But I would say even if you live in these areas right here, anywhere in this area, you need to be on the outlook right here, because this is our biggest areas right here for the potential for big rainfall and a potential landfall. So a little bit to be paying attention to as we go on through that. We'll talk about the rainfall in a little bit as well. So let's take a look here at the spaghetti models. We'll take a look at the GFS spaghetti models here. We obviously see none over here until really about Saturday night. We see it around Saturday night here. Then Sunday, morning. This is where we could start to see, some tropical systems already, a tropical storm, maybe just tropical depression. We do not exactly know about the intensity yet, but as we can see, these low pressures aren't too strong, especially as they are leaving Cuba. But taking a look at the GFS ensembles here, mostly taking it above Cuba. And as it takes it above Cuba here, we start to see it pull off to the north with the GFS. The Keys are going to be impacted here, and then gets pulled up. But if we take a look at this compared to the European models here, it really starts to hug that west coast of Florida. This, I would say, if the GFS is right, which it already has been right pretty much compared to the other models saying the west coast of Florida is in play, the GFS is going to be, if it is right, this could be a major issue for Florida here. This could be a really big issue for all of Florida, the whole Florida peninsula. Even though if it makes a landfall over here, but it makes a big loop back down, we could be seeing a little bit of an interesting situation. But no matter what, so far with these spaghetti models and keeping it that way, west coast of Florida needs to be on the lookout, because this could be lots and lots of rain. And just, the intensity as well. We could be seeing some pretty gusty winds. But let's take a look here. Then we start to see over here by at least Monday, it starts to turn in to the Florida Bend area. We can clearly see. Then this is where it gets a little hard to track. We see it go in. Tuesday, we can see it starts to make a loop. Some of these models over here in northern Florida start to kind of make a loop and bring it back down here. But I wouldn't say that it's going to go all the way up and then come right back down. No, it would probably make more of a subtle type of loop here. But once it's making a loop, it's going to slow down and just stall. Really, it's going to stall over here. And then we see it. Actually, we'll look at this. Some of these low pressures bring it up and then actually back down. And we can see that. And that would obviously be the worst case scenario for Florida. I mean, the GFS would really, if the GFS was right, it would be a really bad case scenario for the, state of Florida here, especially in this circle right here. The rainfall would be astronomical in these areas here. So it'd be definitely something. But look at this. Once again, this is not the exact forecast. We can still see a lot of changes, but I just want to take a look here. It brings it into, still we see a little bit more of a curve push in here. And then watch, some of these spaghetti models bring it back out. So that's another turn in the Gulf of Mexico. So this would obviously be the worst case scenario here for the for Florida. If the GFS is right, we could be seeing a very, very dangerous storm here with flash flooding. This could be definitely something to pay attention to, especially because the GFS thinks we're going to be making a loop in Florida. That could be the worst case scenario. Let's head over to the Euro ensembles, though. So the Euro ensembles are a little bit more of a different type of situation here. The Euro ensembles bringing it more off of to the west coast of Florida here. So keeping an eye out on this. We're watching it very closely here. And look at that. A little bit more off to the west here. Not as strong as a system, but takes it off to the west. But look, once again, the European model is saying it does make a loop, but the European model is bringing it more to the west, so that means this storm will kind of bring it in. So this could be a little bit more of an this would be a little bit more better for the west coast of Florida here, but worse for the Florida Panhandle. And as we can clearly see here, still very, very big loops are expected. This thing is expected to stall out over Florida, over the Florida Bend, over the west coast of Florida. This is all big in play here. And according to some of these models, man, this area right here could be really impacted a lot. The GFS obviously would impact a little bit more of the west coast of Florida here, and the European model, if that was right, it would impact more of the Florida Panhandle. So far, the GFS has been right on where the track is expected to go, but really something to be paying attention to if you live in Florida. And once again, taking a look here at the water temperatures, you know, very hot, obviously, off the west coast here of Florida. 32 degrees Celsius just off of the Tampa Bay here. 31 off of the Florida Panhandle here. We got Tallahassee up there. We have all these beaches up there as well. And then down over here by the Keys as well, we have several, like we have some very, very hot water, you know, that is anticipated, you know, to continue to stay hot. It's above average for this time of year. We're seeing a very, very hot water. So a lot to be paying attention to as we go on, obviously, throughout the next couple days when this storm does make its way through the Gulf. Let's take a look here at the GFS model. So taking a look here at the GFS model, we still are on that 6Z run today. The 12Z should be coming out probably in the next hour or two, so we'll have to keep an eye out on that. The GFS model, though, there it is. So bringing a little bit of a stronger system now over Cuba. So that is something we want to keep an eye out on before this pulls up to possibly the north and then the northeast here. Then we watch it very closely. Look at this. Let's zoom in right here down to the southeast of Florida. Look at this. We can clearly see that rain will start to, on August 3rd, we're going to start to see some of that rain, obviously, this weekend start to come in. Then the GFS bringing it a lot stronger than it did before yesterday. Just like I said, a lot different from yesterday, right off the coast of Tampa Bay. So, and then the question is, does it just go off to the east or northeast? Does it make a loop? That would be obviously the worst case scenario here. But, I mean, this storm does, so the GFS 6Z, a little bit different here than I would say the 00Z, but you can clearly see it does. This would be a really bad issue for northern Florida here. So if you lived in this circle for the GFS here, this would be a really bad scenario for you guys because of it goes out into the Atlantic and then heads back in and just stays there and stalls once again. That would be a lot of rain that I would say no one can exactly take there. I mean, this could be a very, very dangerous situation, but if we head over here to the 00Z, let's take a look at that really quickly here. This brings it off to the west, kind of where the European was saying it here, and then brings it back into the Gulf, but brings it up 948 millibars there for pressure, and then brings it into Mississippi, Louisiana. So obviously there's a big question on where does it exactly go. Do we have a little bit more of a hug towards the west coast of Florida, which would be the worst case scenario for the west coast, or do we see a little bit more of a westward push, kind of what the Euro is saying? The GFS ensembles are saying something completely different. We'll have to keep an eye out on these models no matter what, but Florida really needs to be on the lookout here no matter what. So heading into the 6Z, let's take a look at the precipitation, because I think that's our biggest thing as well for precipitation. We're going to keep an eye out on that. Look at that. Look at that. That is a very, very aggressive storm here, bringing heavy amounts of rain. And that is because it makes that loop out there in the Atlantic. This area right here could be, if this model was correct and it stayed the same, if GFS was staying the same like this, we could be seeing possibly up to 24 inches of rain, 2 feet of rain in this Florida, in the northern Florida here. It's all on play here. We have a lot to be paying attention to as well. We want to keep an eye out, obviously, on this. We're waiting for those spaghetti models to obviously come out. Taking a look here at the European model here. Let's head back to the 00Z from this morning. Kind of agreed with the GFS a little bit here. Obviously keeping it a little bit more of a weaker system, but actually the European had more of that eastern push, I would say, going in. Had a little bit more of an eastern push this morning. Here, had a little bit more of an eastern push. Actually, I think 6Z, yeah, so the 6Z did have more of a little bit westward of a push, but still, literally, I mean, you're keeping an eye out on this. Still, lots of rain is still possibly could be expected, even according to the Euro. So a lot to be paying attention to with the west coast of Florida. I would say, we could be having a pretty big rainfall threat. Flash flooding is going to be our biggest threat, possibly, with this storm. The intensity is still very hard to predict right now. We didn't, some of these models also did not do very good when it came to barrel, but there's still a lot to pay attention to. So before we end off the video, I do want to take a look at the CMC and the icon model, because we've been paying attention to those as well. I don't like leaving those ones out, because that does have a possibility of being right as well, like the icon was for barrel. All right, so let's take a look here at the icon. The 12Z for the icon is now coming out, so we're going to keep an eye out on that. So I'll probably post that on my X page, but look at this. So this is this morning's. You can clearly see, if we head down over here to the southeast, the icon has actually been pretty consistent on bringing it in here to the Florida Bend, but putting most of that problem on the west coast of Florida here. So the icon could be right, but the icon does not say a loop is really happening. So, that's the big question. The European and the GFS, the main models, are saying that there's going to be a loop. It's going to stall out. The icon's not saying that as much, which would be a little bit more of a great news here for the west coast of Florida. Even though for the icon model, west coast of Florida gets the worst amount of rain. The Tampa Bay area, and then possibly goes up into Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina could get some heavy rain too. So really something to be paying attention to. Let's head over to the CMC and take a look at that. So taking a look here at the CMC, the 12Z will be coming out probably in the next couple of hours as well. CMC is kind of bringing it over where the Euro is bringing it. So the icon and the GFS are a little bit more agreeing to each other, and then the CMC and the European are bringing it a little bit more farther to the west, which would be great news for the Western, which would be better at least news of the Western for Western Florida, but worse for the Florida Panhandle. So a lot to be paying attention to with the CMC, then brings it up into Georgia, but still does not say it's going to stall out. So then taking a look here at the precipitation, brings majority of that rain here into the Florida Panhandle. So a lot to be paying attention to over the next couple of hours and the next couple of days as these model runs start to come in. So please be making sure you are staying tuned. All eyes should be on the National Hurricane Center and your National Weather Service. Please be keeping an eye out on this. You need to be keeping an eye out on this system as if you live in Florida. It's going to be a very, very big system that is going to possibly bring lots and lots of rain. So please be keeping an eye out on that. I would make sure you and your family are prepared for anything that you need to do. If evacuation does need to happen, please make sure you do have a plan ready. So thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you leave a like down below, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Thank you, and bye-bye.